9 Hollywood stars who died completely broke. These weren't cautionary tales from tabloid headlines. These were beloved actors who once commanded millions but ended up dying with nothing, their bank accounts empty and their legacies overshadowed by financial ruin. From silent film pioneers who earned fortunes equivalent to $80 million today, to Oscar-nominated actors reduced to living in their cars, the glamour of Hollywood hid desperate struggles that ended in tragedy. Fame in Hollywood has always been fleeting, but for some stars, the fall wasn't just from the spotlight, it was into complete financial devastation. Bad investments, exploitation, addiction, medical bills, and simply being forgotten by an industry that once celebrated them. These are their stories, and number 4 might be the one that stays with you longest. Drop a comment and let us know which Hollywood era you think was the toughest for actors. Starting with number 9. Number 9. Veronica Lake. Georgia-born Constance Frances Marie Aukelman became Veronica Lake, one of the 1940s most iconic film noir actresses. With her signature peekaboo hairstyle that seductively covered one eye, she captivated audiences in classics like Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire, alongside Alan Ladd. At her peak in the early 1940s, Lake commanded $4,500 per week at Paramount Pictures, the equivalent of roughly $75,000 today. But behind the glamorous image was a woman struggling with alcoholism and a reputation for being difficult on set. By the late 1940s, her behavior had made her virtually unemployable in Hollywood. Studio executives quietly blacklisted her. The fall was brutal and swift. Multiple failed marriages drained what money remained. By the 1960s, the woman who once graced the cover of Life magazine was working as a cocktail waitress at the Martha Washington Hotel in New York City, earning $1 an hour plus tips. A brief attempted comeback in the early 1970s went nowhere. On July 7, 1973, Veronica Lake died in Burlington, Vermont, at age 50 from hepatitis and acute kidney injury. She died broke and largely forgotten, her peekaboo hairstyle a distant memory of Hollywood glamour that had faded decades earlier. Number 8. William Frawley. Before there were TV residuals that made actors wealthy for life, there was William Frawley, forever remembered as the cranky landlord Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, one of television's most successful sitcoms. The show dominated ratings from 1951 to 1957, making Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz fabulously wealthy through their ownership stake in Desilu Productions. Frawley, however, was just a contract player earning a salary. While he made good money during the show's run, his fondness for gambling and heavy drinking consumed most of his earnings. Studio executives at Desilu were well aware of his alcohol problem. Desi Arnaz had hired him with the stipulation that any drinking-related absence would result in immediate termination. The veteran character actor, who had appeared in dozens of films before television, never managed to secure his financial future. He continued working not out of passion, but necessity. On March 3, 1966, the 79-year-old Frawley went to see a movie at the Knickerbocker Theater in Hollywood. Walking along Hollywood Boulevard afterward, he collapsed from a heart attack and died on the street. His estate was valued at approximately $92,000, a surprisingly modest sum for someone who had been on one of television's biggest hits and worked steadily for over 4 decades. Number 7. Bela Lugosi. When Bela Lugosi emerged from the fog in the 1931 film Dracula, cape swirling and eyes hypnotic, he created an icon. The Hungarian immigrant became the definitive vampire, his Transylvanian accent and theatrical presence defining the character for generations. But the role that made him famous also destroyed him. Lugosi became so typecast as Dracula that he couldn't escape it. While he earned well during the 1930s, the offers dried up as he aged. By the 1950s, the legendary actor was reduced to appearing in low-budget science fiction films directed by Ed Wood, widely considered the worst filmmaker in Hollywood history. Behind the declining career was a devastating morphine addiction that had gripped Lugosi for decades. Originally stemming from pain medication prescribed during World War I. The addiction consumed both his health and his finances. At age 73, broke and desperate, he voluntarily checked himself into a state hospital for treatment, making headlines as one of the first celebrities to publicly acknowledge drug addiction. He emerged clean but broken. On August 16, 1956, just months after leaving rehab, Bela Lugosi died of a heart attack at age 73. His estate was valued at approximately $2,900. The man who had terrified and thrilled millions was buried in his Dracula cape, one of the few possessions remaining from his glory days. Even in death, he couldn't escape the role. Number 6. Judy Garland? Judy Garland's story isn't just tragic, it's criminal. The girl with the voice that could break your heart sang Over the Rainbow and became Dorothy, beloved by generations. But that same studio system that made her a star systematically destroyed her. MGM controlled every aspect of young Judy's life. Studio executives gave the teenage actress amphetamines to keep her energized through 18-hour shooting days, then barbiturates to help her sleep. They controlled her diet obsessively, criticized her appearance constantly, and managed her finances while paying her a fraction of what her films earned. By the time she was old enough to understand what had been done to her, the addiction was cemented. Despite earning millions throughout her career from films, concert performances, and television specials, Judy Garland never retained wealth. 5 marriages and 4 divorces drained her finances. The addiction to pills and alcohol that MGM had fostered consumed everything else. The IRS pursued her relentlessly for back taxes she couldn't pay. By the late 1960s, the 47-year-old legend was performing concerts simply to pay bills and service debts. She couldn't stop working because she was drowning financially. Her final months were spent living in a borrowed house in London. On June 20, 1969, her 5th husband found her dead in the bathroom from an accidental barbiturate overdose. Judy Garland's estate was $4 million in debt. Her daughter Liza Minnelli had to help arrange the funeral. The woman who sang of a place over the rainbow never found peace or security anywhere on earth. Number 5. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was beautiful, talented, and troubled, a method actor before the term became common, earning 4 Oscar nominations and the admiration of every serious filmmaker in Hollywood. Directors like Alfred Hitchcock, Howard Hawks, and John Huston sought him out. He was being compared to Marlon Brando as one of the greatest actors of his generation. Then came May 12, 1956. Leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's house, Clift lost control of his car and crashed into a telephone pole. The accident nearly killed him. His face was severely damaged. Jaw broken, nose broken, teeth knocked out. Taylor, who rushed to the scene, actually reached into his throat to pull out broken teeth so he wouldn't choke. The physical reconstruction took months, but the real damage went deeper. The pain was excruciating and constant. Doctors prescribed heavy pain medication. Clift, already struggling with alcohol, added pills to his consumption. The downward spiral accelerated. His once perfect face was now asymmetrical, one side partially paralyzed. Close-ups had to be carefully lit and angled. His performances, while still powerful, came fewer and farther between. The medical bills were crushing. The cost of plastic surgery, medications, and constant doctor visits consumed his earnings. Studios became reluctant to hire him, seeing him as unreliable and difficult to photograph. His final years were spent increasingly isolated in his New York townhouse, paranoid and broke. On July 23, 1966, his personal assistant found the 45-year-old actor dead from a heart attack. The accident 10 years earlier had robbed Montgomery Clift of more than his famous face. It had taken his career, his health, and ultimately his financial security, leaving almost nothing behind. Number 4. Stan Laurel. This is the one that breaks your heart. Stan Laurel, one half of Laurel and Hardy, created some of cinema's most beloved comedy. With his partner Oliver Hardy, he made the world laugh through the Great Depression and beyond. Their slapstick routines, perfectly timed and genuinely funny, remain classics nearly a century later. At their peak in the 1920s and 1930s, Laurel and Hardy were among the biggest stars in the world. But here's the tragedy. They were employees, not owners. The studio system meant they earned salaries while Hal Roach Studios and later MGM made fortunes from their work. Those timeless films generated millions in profit. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy received paychecks. Laurel was married 4 times, and the divorces devastated him financially. Alimony payments consumed much of what he earned. In 1955, he suffered a heart attack. The medical costs piled up. When Oliver Hardy died in 1957, Laurel was left alone, living in a small apartment in Santa Monica. What makes his story so heartbreaking isn't just the poverty, it's the grace. In his final years, fans would track down his address and visit. Stan Laurel would welcome them into his modest apartment, entertain them with stories, perform little routines, and send them away smiling. He did this for free, simply happy to be remembered. He spent hours corresponding with fans, watching his old films on television, never bitter about what had been taken from him. On February 23, 1965, Stan Laurel died of a heart attack at age 74. His estate was worth approximately $50,000, a pittance for someone whose creative genius had generated millions for studios and brought joy to countless millions more. The man who made the world laugh died nearly broke, his work exploited by a system that gave him nothing while profiting endlessly from his talent. Even knowing how it ended, he never stopped bringing joy to others. That's what makes it heartbreaking. Number 3. Fatty Arbuckle. In 1921, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was the highest-paid entertainer in Hollywood, earning $1 million per year, equivalent to roughly $17 million today. He had just signed an unprecedented $3 million contract with Paramount Pictures. His physical comedy rivaled Charlie Chaplin's in popularity. The future looked unlimited. Then came September 5, 1921. Arbuckle threw a party at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. During the party, a young actress named Virginia Rappi became ill. She died days later from peritonitis. What happened next destroyed Arbuckle completely. The press, led by William Randolph Hearst's newspapers, sensationalized the story beyond recognition. Arbuckle was accused of assaulting Rappi, causing her death. The details published were lurid, exaggerated, and in many cases completely fabricated. But the damage was done. The public turned on him instantly. 3 trials followed. The first 2 ended in hung juries. The third trial resulted in a complete acquittal. The jury took just 6 minutes to declare him not guilty and even issued a formal apology, stating that a great injustice had been done to him. But Hollywood didn't care about the acquittal. Arbuckle was banned from appearing in films. The legal fees had consumed his entire fortune. Every penny of that $1 million salary and $3 million contract went to lawyers. He was broke and blacklisted. He tried working as a director under the pseudonym William Goodrich, but the work was sporadic and low budget. Depression consumed him, his weight ballooned, his health deteriorated. By the early 1930s, with talking pictures now dominant, Arbuckle was attempting a comeback. He managed to secure a contract for a new series of comedy shorts. On June 29, 1933, the day after signing that contract, his hope for redemption, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle died in his sleep from a heart attack. He was 46 years old and nearly penniless. Modern historians largely agree he was innocent, destroyed by media sensationalism and moral panic. He went from Hollywood's highest-paid star to broke and broken in less than 12 years. Number 2. Butterfly McQueen. I don't know nothing about birthin' babies. That single line from Gone with the Wind made Butterfly McQueen immortal. Her performance as Prissy is one of cinema's most memorable supporting roles in one of history's highest-grossing films. For that performance, Butterfly McQueen was paid $450, equivalent to roughly $10,000 today. Gone with the Wind would go on to earn hundreds of millions of dollars over decades of re-releases. McQueen received nothing beyond that initial payment. No residuals, no profit participation, nothing. The role that should have launched a lucrative career instead became a prison. Hollywood immediately typecast her, offering only stereotypical maid roles that perpetuated racist caricatures. McQueen, a woman of dignity and principles, refused most of them. She would rather struggle financially than compromise her self-respect by accepting demeaning roles. Hollywood punished her for that integrity. The work disappeared. Eventually, she left acting altogether and took regular jobs to survive: waitress, paid companion, department store clerk. She even sold products door to door. She lived in a small apartment in Harlem, then later moved to Augusta, Georgia. Occasional television appearances in her later years brought some income, but not much. The film that made her famous continued generating enormous profits, but McQueen saw none of it. By the 1980s and 1990s, she was living in near poverty. Film historians and fans who learned of her situation tried to help, but she was too proud to accept what felt like charity. On December 23, 1995, tragedy struck. An 84-year-old Butterfly McQueen was using a kerosene heater to warm her modest Augusta home. Something went wrong. The heater caused a fire. She suffered severe burns and died from her injuries. She had been living in near poverty, unable to afford better heating options. Butterfly McQueen appeared in one of the highest-grossing films in cinema history, delivered an unforgettable performance that remains iconic nearly 90 years later, and died broke after spending decades refusing to compromise her dignity for demeaning roles. Gone with the Wind made billions over its lifetime. She received $450 and a legacy of exploitation. Number 1. Buster Keaton. If you want to understand how Hollywood destroys genius, study the life of Buster Keaton. This is the ultimate tragedy. A man who revolutionized cinema, who created masterpieces that are studied in film schools worldwide, who performed death-defying stunts that still amaze audiences today, destroyed by the very system he helped build. In the early 1920s, Buster Keaton was living the dream. He owned his own studio. He had complete creative control over his films. He was earning millions. As writer, director, producer, and star, he created The General, Sherlock Jr., and Steamboat Bill Jr. Films that weren't just comedies, they were groundbreaking works of cinematic art. He pioneered camera techniques, visual effects, and stunt work that influenced generations of filmmakers. Then came 1928, and the decision that ruined everything. MGM offered Keaton a contract, significant money, major studio backing, prestige, but there was a catch. He had to give up his independence. No more creative control. He would be just another contract player. Against the advice of friends who warned him, Keaton signed. The studio immediately destroyed what made him special. MGM executives who understood nothing about his genius forced him into formulaic films. They ignored his input, dismissed his innovative ideas, and treated him like hired help. For an artist who had built his career on total creative freedom, it was suffocating. Keaton spiraled into depression. His marriage to Natalie Talmadge, already strained, collapsed in 1932. The divorce was ugly. He lost custody of his 2 sons. The pain drove him to alcohol, heavily. By 1933, MGM had seen enough. They fired him. His reputation was destroyed. His savings were gone. His house was gone. His studio was gone. Everything. The 1930s and 1940s were the wilderness years. The former millionaire filmmaker took whatever work he could find, bit parts in films, educational shorts for poverty wages, occasional stage appearances. A disastrous second marriage to May Scriven from 1933 to 1936 made things worse. In 1937, his alcoholism became so severe that he was briefly institutionalized. There were periods when Buster Keaton, one of cinema's greatest artists, was essentially homeless. In 1940, something remarkable happened. He married Eleanor Norris, a dancer who helped him get sober. Slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild. Small television roles, commercials, bit parts in films. In the 1950s, a new generation discovered his silent films through film societies and television broadcasts. Critics and film historians began recognizing his genius. In 1959, he received an honorary Academy Award to a standing ovation. But here's the cruelest part. Recognition didn't bring financial security. Decades earlier, when he was broke and desperate, Keaton had signed away the rights to his films for pennies. Those masterpieces, The General, Sherlock Jr., Steamboat Bill Jr., were making money for studios, not for him. His work was priceless. He owned none of it. His final years were spent doing commercials and small television roles to pay bills. He lived modestly in Woodland Hills, California, never recovering the wealth he had once possessed. On February 1, 1966, Buster Keaton died of lung cancer at age 70. The man who created some of cinema's most valuable intellectual property died in relative poverty. The tragedy isn't just that he died broke, it's that the system specifically designed to exploit creative genius chewed him up and spit him out. He performed stunts that could have killed him. He pioneered techniques that changed filmmaking forever. He created art that will outlive us all, and he died without owning any of it, having lost everything to a studio system that valued profits over people and control over creativity. Buster Keaton's story is the ultimate proof that talent, genius, and even immortal art don't guarantee financial security. It's Hollywood's greatest tragedy. So there you have it. 9 Hollywood legends who created joy, art, and unforgettable performances only to die broke. Not because they lacked talent, not because audiences didn't love them, but because of exploitation, addiction, scandal, typecasting, and a system that valued profits over people. Their stories remind us that fame and fortune are not the same thing, and that Hollywood's golden glow often hid devastating darkness. Which story hit you hardest? Did number 4, Stan Laurel, break your heart like it did ours? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this deep dive into Hollywood's tragic side meaningful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from cinema history. Thanks for watching. Remember their art, not just their endings.